In today's video, we have the latest trade rumors on the goalie market. We're looking at goalies like Korpisalo, as well as Marc Andre Fleury, as well as Anton Khudobin. Could any of these guys be traded before the roster freeze or ahead of the NHL trade deadline? We also have the latest on forwards like Debrusk and Evander Kane as well. We also got news on the NHL waiver wire and some injury updates as well. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and rumors to talk about today. Let's kick things off with the news from the NHL waiver wire. We have an interesting situation with the waivers today, that we have a goalie that's available. Wouldn't be shocking to see him claimed. The Colorado Avalanche have goaltender Jonas Johnanssen on waivers. Of course, he was originally a Buffalo Sabre. He was picked up by the Avalanche last year. Pavel Francouz, who's missed an extended period of time, is finally ready to return for the Avalanche. So that requires a roster spot. Johansson's on waivers to create that. And a team like Buffalo could actually use goaltending help right now. Of course, they recently traded for Malcolm Subban, then he got hurt. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen has been doing well, given his playing time that he's been given recently. But I can't help but wonder if they might want some goaltending assistance. And of course, this is a guy they're already familiar with. Wouldn't be shocking to see the Sabres put in a claim, or there's other teams out there that could use goaltending help as well. So we'll see. He might clear, but I think the odds are favorable that he could be claimed, and we might have news on that as early as tomorrow afternoon once the waiver wire goes through his 24-hour process. Some injury updates as well. We got word, as we talked about the other day, that Ben Bishop likely wasn't going to be making a return for the Dallas Stars, that things didn't look good. But now, since I've recorded that video, we do have official confirmation from Jim Nill, the GM of the Stars, and Bishop is expected to meet with the media to announce this as well, I believe tomorrow, that his playing days are essentially over and he will ride out the remainder of his contract on long-term injury reserve. He was doing a lot of rehab work, tried to make a comeback. He went down to the American Hockey League on a conditioning stint, and things didn't go well. He was actually recalled a little sooner than some might have thought because it wasn't going well, and it's just not working out. So they're calling when he has a degenerative knee condition. The knee's not going to be getting better by the looks of things. It's probably only going to gradually get worse as he gets older. So his playing career essentially is over. Big Ben's had a good run though, I must say. He was certainly what you'd call a little bit of a late bloomer. Had a chance, obviously, through the Blues organization, which is where he's from. Ended up getting picked up by the Senators, where he got a little bit of a playing time and kind of a small break, I guess you could say, before he was eventually moved to the Tampa Bay Lightning, which is where he really flourished and given more of a starting role and had a chance to get on a lot more playing time. Then, of course, ended up in Dallas as well. Between Tampa and Dallas, he's been nominated for the Vezina Trophy numerous times. Had some long playoff runs as well. So certainly Big Ben's had himself a pretty good career, especially, like I said, considering that he was into his mid to late 20s before he really had an NHL, got a good crack at sticking in the NHL. So that's good on him. It's unfortunate that his career is going to come to an end this way. I know he's a very well-liked teammate on the Dallas Stars organization. Be interesting to see what comes next for Big Ben here now that his playing days are officially over. A few other injury updates. Back to the Avalanche for a minute. They continue to have bad breaks. This team has really had a difficult time remaining healthy. Now they're going to be without Captain Gabriel Landeskog for a couple more weeks. He was re-injured. Of course, they've already had guys like McKinnon out for an extended time as well. Devon Toews has missed time. This team has been bruised up and battered a lot. Had some COVID issues too. It's not gone well, and now they're going to be without their captain for a couple of weeks, probably get us closer to the Christmas break by the time he's ready to come back. The Lightning lose another decent player as well in Anthony Cirelli. They're already without Braden Point. They're already without Nikita Kucherov. The list goes on here that they continue to have to play without. Cirelli's now next up on that list. He's going to miss some time. Thankfully, like Steven Stamkos is there and actually playing relatively well. And some of the younger kids like Radish and Kachuk has been stepping up and getting the job done to keep this team, getting points in the standings while all these guys are out, so that they're still in the mix. But they're certainly a team that many of us predicted for the playoffs, which I still think is a very strong, realistic possibility. But the more they're without these players over time, it does make things that much more difficult. So it'll be interesting to see how this might impact their standings. Even if they do make playoffs, they may not be able to finish as high as they might have been hoping for here. And the Jets are going to be without Captain Blake Wheeler for a while as well. It's not quite clear. I haven't seen a full team update as of yet, but he was injured in this weekend's NHL action. So another blow for the Jets, like the Avalanche, who've had their issues staying healthy and keeping them, having a full lineup to be able to compete night in and night out. Now, some updates as well on the Vancouver Canucks and their search for a general manager. We know they have Jim Rutherford as the hockey operations leader in the president role and interim GM. A lot of speculation on who he might hire as the general manager, but I don't think he's going to be rushing into this. I would imagine pretty likely going to I mean, you never know, right? It could happen sooner, but wouldn't be shocking to see this drag on into the early part of the new year, or even later into the season. Like, I think Rutherford can handle the role along with some of the other people in the organization that'll be helping him. Like they already had kind of in place. They're already kind of working by committee. Now that committee got a little bit smaller this weekend by removing a few more people. But of course, Stan Smeel, who's the most recent interim GM, who was interim GM for 4 days or whatever it was till they hired Rutherford, is there too. So they have some guys that can help. But Thomas Durant of The Athletic has a recent article out talking about some interesting candidates that he feels could be in the mix. Now, this is a long list, and this is likely going to be whittled down to a shorter list before they really even conduct interviews. But according to Durant, these are people he feels would either be a good candidate for a variety of reasons. Not all these people are likely going to be interviewed, and of course, like I said, not everybody's linked by direct source. Some of this is strictly opinion based, but some of the names mentioned include former GM Jason Botterill, the Buffalo Sabres. Of course, he worked under Rutherford in Pittsburgh for a long time, so they have a good relationship. And I think Botterill is somebody that Rutherford does respect, so there's that. There's the Bergevin-Mellanby duo from Montreal, who are no longer with the Habs organization. They're both mentioned in this list here as well. To be honest, considering Rutherford's the president, I'm not really sure that I see that as a good fit. I mean, maybe Mellanby, but I don't see Bergevin going as the GM under Rutherford. You never know. Stranger things have happened, I suppose, but I just don't see that being a good fit. Another interesting name that's mentioned is Ray Ferraro, who, of course, is one of the top analysts in hockey. Of course, works for TSN as well as ESPN in the States, doing games for a variety of broadcasts, and he's certainly one of the best in the business, at least in my opinion. I know he obviously gets pegged to do a lot of the NHL games year to year quite often as well. So, I mean, Ray is a great hockey personality. He's been in the game a long time, former player, played a long time, very knowledgeable. Not really sure he's pegged for GM duties without having any other front office or managerial experience. Like I said, very, very, very knowledgeable guy, knows the game extremely well given how long he's been at it. But would he want to be thrusted directly into a role as a GM without, first working in other roles, first? I can't see Ray wanting to do that. But if he ever did want to get into it, I can see it being in Vancouver, considering that's where he and his wife and family live year-round. So obviously at some point he may prefer, if he had a chance to work for the Canucks instead of traveling so much with his TV job, where he does have young kids, of course, with he and Cami Granado. So be interesting to see what happens. Of course, his wife, Cami Granado, is also working for the Seattle Kraken. Not that that really matters too much, but be interesting to see them both working for rival NHL franchises. Another name that was mentioned is Haley Wickenheiser. Of course, currently works for the Maple Leafs in a player personnel role. Not really sure about that. She's also a doctor, so I don't know how much desire she has to take on a GM role. Agent JP Barry was mentioned. That's an interesting one. Of course, that would depend if he wants to do that or not. Some of these top agents in the game, I think they probably make more money being agents than they would general managers. So hard to say on that front. Mike Fuda, of course, former assistant GM, has been mentioned. John Chayka's in this list as well. Of course, Chayka, the former GM of the Coyotes. I'm not sure that he'd really be interested either. There's a lot of rumors of what he's going to be able to do and opportunities that might exist for him coming up here, and I'm not sure that really makes sense. Kevin Weeks has been mentioned. Of course, he's been around a lot of the more recent GM openings and interviews, a well-respected hockey analyst as well, who's, again, like Ferraro, a former player, has worked in TV quite a long time. Hard to say, but he's been a little bit more linked to GM jobs than Ferraro has in recent months and even last few years. So I'm not sure at what point he'll get his opportunity, but obviously he keeps applying for these jobs. So to me, he must be interested in moving from TV into management when the right opportunity comes along. So all these names are very interesting for a variety of reasons. He also lists Stam Smeal as a possibility, and the Sedins, who are already in the Canucks organization. I wouldn't completely rule that out either. So we'll have to see what happens. Some very interesting names. Not really sure any of them are going to stick here and actually turn out to be the person for this role. So we'll see where this goes. Now, before we jump further into the video, we do need to pause for a moment and acknowledge our channel sponsor, Manscaped. Top Shelf Hockey is proud to be sponsored by Manscaped. And guess what? Hockey fans are buzzing because hockey is back. Want to know what else is buzzing? The Lawnmower 4.0 from our friends at Manscaped, who are the global leaders in male grooming, trusted by over 2 million men worldwide. I highly recommend the Performance Package 4.0, which includes their new state-of-the-art Lawnmower 4.0, as well as some other great features. The lawnmower itself has a 7,000 RPM motor, a new multifunction switch that can engage as a travel lock, gives you the ability to turn on an LED spotlight as well for a more precise shave. Also, as I've mentioned on numerous occasions before, Manscaped is about much more than just a trimmer. They have everything, all aspects covered in male grooming, including some great formulations like their brand new ultra premium body wash to keep you smelling great all day long. It's certainly a big hit here. I absolutely love it. They also have other exfoliators and gels to keep all aspects of your grooming needs covered. I highly recommend you check out manscaped.com. Use promo code TSH for 20% off and free shipping. That's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com using promo code TSH. So thanks very much for watching that promotional content. I do greatly appreciate it. On to the trade section of the video here today. I want to take a look at the goalie market. Now, the goalie market is going to be interesting heading into the roster freeze. Now, in case you're not aware, as of December the 19th, there will be an NHL roster freeze for the holiday season so that players cannot be traded too close to Christmas and really have a major impact and disrupt their family life. And it's such a, family time of year. So from the 19th until the 28th, there is a roster freeze. There's some other dates in between there as well, that if a player is called up, that he is also considered on the frozen roster and can't be sent up or down between the AHL and NHL too. So there's also rules in place for that. But when it comes to the goalies, the main ones mentioned here is Jonas Korpisalo, Anton Khudobin, and Marc Andre Fleury. Now, the interesting piece here with Korpisalo, of course, we know he's with the Blue Jackets. The Jackets are certainly doing better than I think some of us might have predicted, but it's fair to say he's not having the greatest season. And secondly, he's definitely not, the starting goaltender any longer. Like that ship has sailed. Elvis has that job nailed down. He likely will be traded, considering he's a pending unrestricted free agent, and likely leaves the organization looking for more opportunity elsewhere. He's about to turn 28 years old, and the part about this makes it interesting is Korpisalo is from Finland. In case you're not aware, Finland is one of the countries that requires all of their males to perform some military duty before the age of 28. Now, when a lot of these athletes that end up leaving the country and working in Canada or the United States or elsewhere around the world, they oftentimes complete this military duty when they're home during their off season. But this is something that Korpisalo has actually put off. And the Finnish government military recently put out a list of Finnish athletes that were still required and have not completed their time. Then he is listed on this, and he's turning 28 in April. Now, of course, they put out a list saying that any athletes mentioned in this list that has not completed their time yet will start, I believe it was April the 10th. Now, of course, April 10th, his hockey season is not going to be over, and he's not the only Finnish athlete mentioned playing in North America either. So he actually commented to Aaron Portzline in The Athletic in an article discussing this situation, saying that he understands that he has to do it. He's been putting it off because he doesn't want to miss a lot of his off-season training and stuff like that. They didn't want, obviously cared more about hockey than he did about serving his military time. And at the end of the day here, he said he's not going to meet that date. He's not going to end his season early and go back and report to the Finnish military service. That they're going to have to make some sort of special arrangement and for him to start it once his season is over. Now, of course, if Korpisalo ends up getting traded, like many of us suspect, he could end up on a playoff team. He might be well into May or June before his season is over, depending on where he ends up and how well they do in the playoffs, which at this point is extremely difficult, if not impossible, to predict. So we'll have to keep an eye on that situation. I wonder if any NHL teams that might be interested in trading for him, if they are, playoff bound teams, especially if that might be something that causes them to hesitate. He said in the article that if the Finnish government wants them to do this, they're going to have to come get them. So I'd hate to see anybody get into any kind of trouble. And when it comes to some of the stuff, some governments will push it and make an example out of them. So we'll see where this goes. And I'll be curious to see if this impacts his trade value as well. When it comes to Khudobin, it's clear that Oettinger and Holtby are the tandem there in Dallas. We no longer have to question about the future of Ben Bishop. As I mentioned earlier, we know he's done. So I still think that the idea of Khudobin being traded makes a ton of sense. This Dallas team very well could be a playoff team, and it may not be. I think they're kind of what we'd still say is uncertain, a little bit of a bubble situation, and he may not be the only one that's traded if indeed they're, scheduling themselves, if indeed they're trending downwards and are, looking like they're more likely to miss the playoffs. So the big interesting one here is Marc Andre Fleury, who of course has more of the trade protection and say in his contract and where he ends up going. The Blackhawks are still trying to evaluate that situation. I don't see a scenario where they get into the playoffs, and I still found more articles and more suggesting linking Fleury to a team like the Edmonton Oilers, but that would be extremely challenging and difficult to predict and how it would work out, to be honest. As much as it sounds great, would be a good fit in a lot of ways, and I can understand the Oilers wanting some goaltender insurance, given how things have gone with Mike Smith and how Koskinen played in the playoffs more recently. That's not going to be easy to do. So can Fleury go to the Oilers? Maybe, but it would be very, very tricky to say the least. But those are the three main goaltenders we're looking at right now. Alexander Georgiev could join that, but as long as the Rangers are playing the way they are, and if Igor is going to miss some time, Shesterkin it is, then I would say that the odds of Georgiev getting moved are slimmer. But if the Rangers pull off any kind of bigger trade, that maybe Georgiev is included in that, and then with another goaltender coming back or something, but they would obviously need some help in that position. They can't just move him without replacing him. Now, the other players we want to touch on quickly is Evander Kane and Jake Debrusk. When it comes to Kane, he recently made his AHL debut for the Barracuda, the Sharks AHL team, and that it was a very heavily scouted game, including a handful of NHL teams having scouts there to watch Kane's debut in the American League. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. Of course, as we mentioned before, the most likely scenario, if he were to be traded, which we know the Sharks certainly want to do and have no intention of recalling him, at least at this point, until a deal can be reached. And he also seems to have some kind of special arrangements made where he doesn't have to play in every game and go on the road with the American Hockey League team due to the ongoing court situation with his estranged wife and daughter in custody and all that stuff. So we'll see where that goes, but still lots of teams in the mix there scouting Kane. So we'll see if that generates any interest. One game is likely not going to be enough, but at least they're going to watch them. It shows you that teams do have interest and they want to keep an eye on that situation. And when it comes to Jake Debrusk, again, as I mentioned on the weekend here, the possibility of a trade, straight up for another disgruntled young player who wants a fresh start somewhere that might be a good fit with Islanders forward Anthony Beauvillier, who was recently a healthy scratch. That's just a more of an opinion-based piece suggesting that the two players could be swapped for each other given their age, come from the same draft class, performance, that, it's not maybe a one-for-one deal, but it's something that should be relatively close given how they've each performed. I also came across an article suggesting that the Flames, Blues, Rangers are also expressing interest in Debrusk, and with the Flames possibly, maybe looking at offering Nikita Zadorov. As much as it might be interesting for the Bruins to get a big bruising defenseman back there, I don't know that Zadorov is strong enough to really consider that. I mean, that's something that the Bruins would probably turn out to regret. Many feel Debrusk, if he can get his career on track with wherever he ends up, could still be that 20, 25, maybe even 30 goal guy for a number of seasons. If they get Zadorov back and want to move on from him after a season, that would be a huge waste in a bust situation. We've seen Zadorov bounce around from other teams, so as much as the author of that article probably has aspirations to get Debrusk to Calgary, I just don't see that being a scenario that really makes a ton of sense. Would the Calgary Flames be a good landing spot for a guy like Jake Debrusk? Absolutely, but I think it would be more likely, and even then I'm not sure it would happen, that a guy like Sean Monahan would probably be what the Flames would want to offer up, considering how he's played, but I'm not sure the Bruins do that. But the Bruins do need help at the center position, so if they're going to trade a winger to get a center back, probably would be something they prefer. I can see them getting a defenseman as well, as a possibility if it's the right defenseman. I don't think Zadorov's that guy, so I could see a scenario where maybe they would consider Monahan, but even then, I'm not sure that he's played well enough to consider that trade either. He's a little bit older than Debrusk, different contract, so I'm not really sure that makes the most sense. I think the Flames, as much as there's a lot of reasons to think it makes sense, it's not going to be easy to do, so we'll have to see where that goes. As I mentioned before, I think a team like the Edmonton Oilers, of course, where he's from, his dad Louis calls Oilers games, lives in an area. To me, like, would the Oilers consider moving a guy like a Tyson Barrie or something? Because they have enough defensemen now, if they can keep everybody healthy with the way that Nurse and Bouchard, etc. has played. I could see maybe Barrie being expendable, but at the same time, the Bruins would probably prefer a lefty, so it's not exactly a perfect fit. But you see what happens. These players are all being discussed on the trade market, heavily rumored to be traded soon, and we'll see where things go. So that's the latest news and rumors for you today. Let me know your thoughts on something discussed down below in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.